Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 9 o'clock on December 18th, 2023 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. And we'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territories of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, Chippewas of Saugeen, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. And we appreciate the contributions that Indigenous people have made in caring for, shaping, strengthening this community. We're dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us toward a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis. Roll call this morning: Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Prenger. Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
And I'd like to acknowledge the members of staff that are here this morning too. So I'd like to remind any councillors to disclose the pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, either now or as it arises during the meeting. And we go to the business for which this special meeting was called, which is the 2024 municipal budget. And you know, every year, even though we do it every year, we stop and ponder just a moment about the significance of the municipal budget, where our priorities are established and confirmed. If you want to know what somebody is thinking, just watch how they spend their money. That's a great way to do that. We begin the process by thanking our municipal staff. You listen to the work that each department puts into it. It's not just our Director of Corporate Services, though they play a significant role in combining and amalgamating and presenting, but every department contributes to this. Every director, manager, supervisor, listening to the staff, learning new applications, new implementing and managing change that occurs in our municipality every day. So the process this morning will begin by hearing the opening remarks and direction from our Director of Corporate Services. And then we'll go through other directors as we have time for them. I would ask council that we leave questions till the end of each presentation from each director. And we'll, as appropriate this morning, as this is kind of the information session, we'll leave any questions at a very strategic level. Also acknowledge there's a closed session coming, so the open budget process will likely end in and around 10:30 to afford us some time for closed session. Would that be enough time for that? Yeah, of course. Okay, so with those remarks, I'd like to welcome our Director of Corporate Services, Roxana Bauman, to begin the 2020, well, not begin, to continue the 2024 budget process with our council. Good morning, Director.
Good morning. So as part of the budget package, you'll have the budget report that's been provided, as well as the presentation, which is essentially a summarized version of what's in the report. So if you're looking for the additional details, that would be in the body of the report. And again, if anybody needs a printed copy, even after this meeting, just please let our department know and we'll make sure you get a printed copy. So just wanted to start off the presentation with an overview of the budget process. So the new budget policy was adopted by Council in May of this year, and it provides the overall framework and process for the development of the annual operating and capital budget. So we start working on the budget in August, and a survey was conducted in August to solicit feedback from the public on the budget. There were 241 responses received, which was a slight increase over the previous year. And this report was summarized and provided to council as part of the staff report back in September. As well, in September, the budget plan report was provided to council, and it summarized all of the known impacts on the 2024 budget at that time, and it set out the timelines and the budget meeting dates. And at this meeting, the 2024 wage increase was also established by council, which used the federal 12-month CPI rate of 3.3%, and those rates were incorporated into the budget. Next, the rates and fees bylaw was brought forward in October, which set out the charges that will be effective as of January 1st, 2024. And these rates are used as inputs when developing the revenue estimates in the draft budget. Also in October, staff provided an asset management update report in advance of the budget process. The report provided an update on the progress of the asset management plan, as well as a review of the recommended financial strategy, and also how the annual contributions that we make as part of the budget every year are comparing to this strategy. Then in November, staff finalizes the budget and compiles everything that the departments have done and reviews everything on in a detailed line-by-line review. There's various revisions and drafts, and the final draft and the tax rates are then calculated. So in December is when the staff receive the final tax roll. So that at the beginning of the first week of December, that's when all of the final tax rates can be calculated, and the tax rates are adjusted accordingly. And then in January, council proceeds with the deliberation of the budget. We do listen to external group delegations that have funding requests. There are a couple of funding requests that we've received, and those have been included in the budget package. But there will be an opportunity for those groups to present at the first budget meeting in January. And then we expect that the budget will be approved and passed in February. So specific to this 2024 budget, the approach when staff do put the budget together, it's historically been to deliver the first draft incorporating all of the funding amounts that are required by each department to sustain the current service levels. The initial budget would have also included amounts for projects or initiatives that are not necessarily required but are perceived as favorable for the organization. So basically, we've always just put forward a budget that includes conservative estimates on the revenue side, and also all costs necessary to deliver and meet existing service levels. So the issue with the 2024 draft budget is that if we had followed the same approach, we would have resulted in a starting tax rate increase of 14%. The mayor has requested that staff deliver a budget that would provide a single-digit tax rate increase. So management revisited their budgets and made reductions to reduce spending, including reductions to some services. And these reductions are summarized in the budget report. They're itemized on a separate list, and you can see the implications of each reduction accordingly. So after this was done, the tax rate increase was adjusted to 7%, which is now what has been included in this budget package today. So just a quick recap of municipal budgeting. So the operating budget covers the day-to-day expenses that are needed to deliver the services to residents, and these are ongoing recurring costs typically, and include expenses such as wages, office supplies, utilities. And then we have two separate operating budgets. So one is for the general levy. This is paying for programs and services of the municipality, but these are based on property taxes and user fees and grants. And then we have a separate operating budget for the rate-based services, which would be for water and wastewater, as well as for the building department. And with those rate-based operating budgets, there is no impact to the property tax rate. They are fully funded through user fees. And then for the capital budget, this represents the municipality's plan to purchase, build, maintain, repair, and replace assets and infrastructure. The capital budget directly and indirectly impacts the operating budget, as funds are needed to cover the day-to-day operating expenses associated with each asset. The 2024 capital budget is funded from a combination of reserves and reserve funds, grants, developer contributions, and donations. This particular year does not have anything funded from external debt. And also none of the capital projects are directly funded by the general tax levy. So that means if you remove a project from the capital budget, you won't immediately find a lower tax rate. It will have no impact on the tax rate. And this is just a recap of the property tax dollars allocation. The tax bill itself is split into 3 separate portions. So roughly 57% of the overall property tax bill is to pay for municipal services, 33% goes to pay for the county services, and 10% is for the school boards. This is similar every year. It just changes a little bit depending on each of the rates. The county has approved its 2024 net tax levy increase, or the draft, I should say, at 6.16%. However, the tax rate has not been finalized or calculated, and the province has not yet set the 2024 education tax rate. So in 2016, MPAC updated the assessment values of every property in Ontario, and there has been no reassessment. And therefore, for the 2024 taxation year, we will continue to use the tax values from 2016. The province did indicate that they will conduct a review of the taxation and assessment system, and any reassessments will be deferred until this work has been completed. We have not received any timelines for that yet. The table below on the chart indicates the total taxes that the municipality has collected over the past 5 years in each year, and it includes the education portion retained. This is just the municipal levy. It doesn't include the county or school board. And so you can see here is the 2024 draft tax levy is 23 million, which does include the PIL. And if you compare that to the previous year, it's an increase of 7.26%. So when you hear people talk about the tax levy versus the tax rate, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the total tax dollars levied from one year in comparison to the previous year. So that rate is 7.26%. But if you're actually calculating the tax rate increase, it's a 7% rate increase. So for the 2024 budget, a 1% tax rate increase will bring in an additional $196,000 in municipal property tax revenue for the municipality. And that equates to $8.21 for the property tax bill for every $100,000 in assessment. And for the average residential household assessed at $275,000, that would be $22.57. So because of the fact that MPAC has not reevaluated properties since 2016, you continue to see this number being 275,000, even though we all know that properties sell for much more than this. But the next slide just will show you a calculation of different examples of what a 7% tax rate increase would look like. So column A is what your assessment value could be. Column B would be the draft municipal tax rate proposed for 2024. And so when you multiply the two together, you receive your draft property tax bill, the municipal portion only. If you were to compare that to the 2023 column D, you'll see that the 7% increase translates to whatever it is there. So $100,000 would be $57.46. So this slide just illustrates the impact of a 7% tax rate increase depending on what your assessment value actually is. So this slide takes us back to 2012, so over 10 years ago, and just shows how our rate itself compares to our neighbors. So back in 2012, Kincardine had the third lowest tax rate. And if you had $100,000 in assessment, then your tax bill would have been $471. So it would have been one of the third lowest. But now you'll see in 2023, we're more so in the middle. The median taxes for 100,000 CVA would be $758, and we're slightly over that. But I did want to say that just looking at the tax rate by itself is somewhat meaningless. You would really need to consider the amount that homeowners pay and not just the rate itself, which takes you back to a couple of slides ago about what your assessment value is. So in areas where the property values are low and where there are fewer homes or in less populated areas, you would need to have a higher tax rate in order to ensure you had sufficient tax dollars generated. So this slide is just showing a measure of affordability. So the data that was taken to develop this chart was taken from the draft. At the time, it was still a draft study. It was the draft 2023 BMA municipal study, which includes comparators for 121 participating municipalities, and Kincardine is one of the ones that participates in the study. This chart provides a comparison of the allocation of gross income available to fund municipal services on a typical household in each municipality. So the approach used is that it compares the average income in a municipality against the tax burden of a typical home in that municipality and applies the 2023 residential tax rates, so the current year's tax rates. And then it ranks them as low, medium, or high. And so the low would be, the lowest in that range was 2%. So 2% of your overall median income for that municipality would be considered the lowest. The highest was 5.2%, and the median was 3.6%. And so Kincardine was 2.9%, and it was identified as a low ranking.
Strategic question, Councillor Stewart?
Yes, it is. Thank you for being so patient, Mayor. This is all good, but you know, we're comparing not apples to apples. We're comparing this tax rate. What I really like to know is compare it to, you got to put the services, the level of services, because when you're just comparing income to income, what kind of services are those communities doing compared to ours? So I think in the future, if you wouldn't mind, we need to talk more about the services being delivered. Thank you.
So this slide is a measure of affordability. So the next slide is also a measure of affordability, but it's the total municipal burden as a percentage of household income. So this also includes your water and wastewater costs, which, as I said before, are not included on the tax bill. So it takes the overall amount that you would pay for property taxes as well as water and sewer on a typical home. And again, Kincardine has been ranked as low in this study. The lowest was 2.8%. And the highest was 7.2% of total household income. This particular chart happened to have Bruce Grey as well included as a statistic, and the Bruce Grey median was 4.7, which was comparable to the overall median of all participating municipalities, and Kincardine had a ranking of 3.8%. And this chart shows the tax revenue generated by each property tax class, just for information. The residential tax class makes up 64% of the overall tax revenue, followed by the commercial, and then you have the education tax PIL of 9.6%, industrial 7.2%, farm and managed forest is 5.9%, and pipeline as well, which doesn't appear on this chart. And this slide just provides an overall review of the allocation of where our municipal tax dollars do go. And as you can see, the majority of your $100 in municipal taxes would be used to fund roads and transportation costs. So that would include winter maintenance and snow clearing, fleet, signage, ditching, tree planting, soggy mobility. And then you have the capital contributions that we would be making, and those would be for the Life Cycle Reserve Fund and for the landfill, et cetera. Then you have recreation and parks and facilities is $19 of your overall $100, police, fire, and emergency services, and then all others are grouped together just because they were so insignificant in comparison to everything else. We group them together. These categories are based on the categories provided in the FIR. And you can see that water and wastewater is not included in here because of the fact that it's not funded by the tax dollars. So this chart shows the operating expenses by type. And as you can see that the salary and benefits represent the majority of the municipality's operating budget, followed by the purchase of materials and supplies at 22% and contracted services at 16%. And with respect to the salaries and benefits making up 34%, this is consistent within the public sector. And it is an average was published by the Fraser Institute, and that was 37% of total operating expenses were made up by salaries and benefits. So we are somewhat comparable there. And with respect to the revenue sources, it's no surprise that taxation is representative of the majority of the income that we receive, 63%, followed by, where am I here? Sorry, I don't have these in order. Other income is 3.24%, sorry, 9%. And then you have water and sewer included in here as well. And they're separated out from the user fees of 8%, and then grant revenue. So overall, the total revenue is about 37.6 million, and taxation revenue makes up the majority of that. So now I'm going to go into some of the specifics of the 2024 budget. This slide is a summary of what's included in your budget package as well, and it represents the uncontrollable or unavoidable changes from one year to the next year. And this is what's causing the majority of the tax rate increase for 2024. So the column that says tax levy impact, so if we take the first one as an example, salaries and benefits, $374,883. That column represents the change between the 2024 and 2023 expense amounts. So the salaries and benefits amount of 374,000, it's a positive number and represents the additional cost from 2023 to 2024. Then you have a user-funded portion, 62,269. So that portion will represent the user-funded budget. So they don't impact the tax rate, but it's just split out there to show you, for a combined total budget impact of 437,000. And so if you were to calculate the impact of the changes in the wages from one year to the next, it's 1.91% tax rate increase. So I'll go over these in further detail later on, but this is just a summary of all of the changes that are considered to be unavoidable. And those ones amount to a 4% tax rate increase. So total budget impact of 874,000. And then this slide summarizes what I guess are considered controllable expenses, however, not really recommended to decrease. So again, it takes the same format as the previous slide. We've called them asset lifecycle maintenance activities. It quantifies the additional costs that have been included in the operating budget for what could be considered as asset lifecycle maintenance activities. And if removed from the budget, it could have impacts or negative impacts on our equipment and our facilities and our overall assets. So we've left them in, although some of them have been reduced in further slides, as you'll see. So again, repairs and maintenance for buildings represents the highest impact on the budget, and that has a total increase from one year to the next of $112,140. So if you take that as a tax rate impact, it's 0.55% on the tax rate for having to do these additional repairs and maintenance. The municipality owns and maintains 124 municipal buildings with a 2022 replacement cost of $83 million. So a significant number of high-value building components are between 46 and 50 years of age, and ongoing maintenance activities are required in order to improve or even just maintain the levels of service of these assets. And as the buildings age, the required maintenance and repair costs are expected to continue to increase. Several facilities will have third-party condition assessments performed in the rest of this year and early 2024, which will provide staff with further insight into the state of these facilities and the associated long-term costs. Materials, so this would be for dust and hard top, loose top, and sand. You'll see that these are increasing by $106,000, and that would have a tax rate impact of 0.54%. So the impact of this is both inflationary as well as the requirement to purchase increased quantities of materials for various road operation activities. The municipality's maintenance contracts have been reduced or held at the same dollar values for several years, and due to market impacts, annual inflation, and historical reductions, these contracts must be increased in order to bring the maintenance levels back to required levels. So without sufficient spending on materials such as gravel and dust control, there could be challenges in ensuring the roads are properly shaped and maintained, leading to increased complaints and possibly safety concerns. For grounds maintenance, there's a $33,000 increase over the prior year. So the municipality owns 269 park and yard improvement assets based on the asset management plan with a replacement cost of $10 million. And these assets also require ongoing investment, and therefore additional grounds maintenance expenses are required of $34,000. Some of the planned works include sports field dressing and painting, equipment, playground surface materials, park water feature repairs, new tarps for baseball diamonds, and other general maintenance. Fleet and repair maintenance costs are $25,000 increase. And again, the asset management plan states that there are 88 fleet assets. Now this has changed since then, but at the time there were 88 fleet assets with a replacement cost of $16 million at that time. And the 2022 asset management plan indicated that associated with indicate that 50% of the fleet was either in poor or very poor condition. So we would anticipate that we would need to further invest in our fleet. And therefore, that's why, that's part of the reason why that cost is increasing. And for beach maintenance, that's an impact of $25,000. The waterfront budget includes additional costs for beach grooming and snow fencing. And grooming beaches are only once during the summer is a compromise, as our number one goal is to keep heavy machinery off the waterfront. So that is part of the reason why the beach maintenance expenses are increasing by $25,000. And finally, mural maintenance is increasing by $15,000. And again, we do have several murals in the municipality, and they do require touch-ups from time to time and ongoing maintenance. So that is $15,000 higher in this budget in comparison to the previous year. So if you aggregate all of those, you have a total budget impact of $316,000, and that's a 1.6 that's a 1.6 tax rate impact. And then some of this information would have been provided in the earlier budget report back in October that staff presented. So these are summarizing the 2023 one-time tax mitigation measures that were done and then had to be reversed in the 2024 budget. So in the 2023 budget, the Bruce Telecom dividend, there was 50% of it, or $250,000, that was allocated to the operating budget, diverted away from the capital budget. The reason was to decrease the tax rate. So now this has to be completely removed from the budget because there will be no dividend, and the sale has not yet been finalized. So the dividend has been not included in the budget. So the impact of that is 1.28%. As well, the school resource officer, that has been in the previous budget, that was offset by a grant. And so the grant was just a one-time. We didn't have any more funds from that grant remaining. And therefore, in order to continue to fund the school resource officer, the $27,000 needs to be funded on the tax rate. There was also a one-time transfer from the tax mitigation reserve fund equivalent to $30,000. Again, that's reversed. The nurse practitioner and physician incentives, that was $155,000, and that was offset as well by a reserve fund, and so it's an ongoing cost, so those funds are now on the tax rate and are not offset by any reserve funds. As well, there was the tourism staffing students and horticultural students. Those were temporarily removed as a one-time reduction in the 2023 budget, and now they've been added back in the 2024 budget. So the overall impact of 2023 tax mitigation measures is $505,000, which is about 2.5% on the tax rate. So to take everything I just said is summarized on this slide. So if you take all of those individual budget impacts, the uncontrollable changes that are considered to be unavoidable, the asset lifecycle maintenance activities, and the reversal of all of the 2023 tax mitigation measures, you get to a tax rate impact of 8.2%. So this means to make up for that shortfall, you would have to raise the tax rate by 8.2%. There are a couple of things offsetting this. One is just other cumulative variances that amount to $32,000, so there's nothing there. But there is also the property assessment growth impact. So if you factor in the in-year growth from assessment, then that offsets the overall tax rate increase by 1%. So that brings us to the tax rate increase of 7%. So in order to be, as I mentioned before, in order to be able to put forward a 7% or single-digit tax rate increase, staff did have to go back to review their departmental operating budgets to look for cost reductions or service adjustments. And some of these reductions did include deferring planned work and reducing contingency budgets and other reductions. And the following slides will summarize all of that, and they amounted to a total savings or reduction of $508,000, equivalent to 2.56% on the tax rate. So I'm definitely not going to list all of these one by one, but you'll see that each column speaks to what the service level or cost reduction is, the corresponding tax rate impact, and the reason for it, and what are the potential implications of those reductions. So these are included on the next few slides, but I won't go through them all. And then, whoops. And then there's some additional items, items for council's consideration, which, as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that these are typically things that staff probably would have originally have put forward in the budget just automatically, but in being aware of a single-digit tax rate increase, they were not included in the budget. And that includes the 3% annual contribution to the Life Cycle Reserve Fund. So typically that's always built into the budget. This would be the first year that it's not included in the budget. So that would be an additional 3%. There's some other items here. I'm not going to list them one by one, but if you, there is something I had to mention because it's not included on here and it was an addition after the fact. So on here, there was for the Accessibility Committee, there was a motion passed at the November 23rd meeting that asked for council's consideration to include the SMART proposal for enhanced accessible transportation services in Kincardine. And that proposal has been attached to the agenda for council to review. And the proposal, what I would have added in this chart would be a $250,000 increase, which would be to add an additional vehicle fully equipped for accessible transit services, as well as a professional driver specifically dedicated to the municipality. So this was something that was requested by the committee and would have been included on this chart. And if it would be included, then the total amount at the bottom would be 1.157 million or a 5.9% tax rate increase. So this slide summarizes everything now I just said. So you can see where we just finished talking about the 7% there. And then we're adding in the cost and service reductions. So those are the reductions that staff made, which is 2.56%. And then if we were to add our items for consideration that I just mentioned, but excluding the SMART proposal, that's an additional 4.3%. So our gross property tax increase would have been 13.86%. So this would have been the starting point for the budget. And if you exclude the impact of the assessment growth, it actually would have been 14.87%. So within the budget package, there are some new position requests for 2024. There's additional information provided in the package, but I'm just summarizing here a total of 6 FTEs that are being requested for 2024. One of them is just a one-year contract. And none of those were included in the budget. So just to go over some of the uncontrollable changes in further details, starting with the salaries and statutory benefits. So the total payroll costs, as I mentioned before, had an increase by 437,000 or 3.5%. So for the salaries, the inflationary wage increase is one of the reasons of 3.3%. It's effective January 1st, as well as annual step increases. So as employees move up the grid. As well, there was an increase to the minimum wage of $1.05 per hour, and that accounts for 32,000 of that 313,000 variance. So that's 10%. For the benefits went up by 123,000. So this would include OMERS, WSIB, group insurance, CPP, EI, EHT, LTD, health and dental benefits. So 26,000 of that increase is attributed to the increased OMERS contributions that are required. 26,000 is due to CPP contributions. The maximum pensionable earnings is increasing in 2024. And also there's an additional maximum pensionable earnings calculation for those earning up to 73,200, and that's resulting in an additional annual contribution from the employer of $188 per qualifying employee. As well, 24,000 of the increase is relating to long-term disability premiums, and then the remainder is for everything else. So then moving on to the OMPF funding. So OMPF funding has decreased by 168,500 or 14%. The chart just shows you the trend over the last several years of what we've been receiving every year. The majority of the decrease is due to the calculation of the farm area measure component, which has reduced by 4.5%. And basically says the number of properties classified under the farm property tax class has reduced year over year, and therefore our overall funding allotment has decreased. So this is another change that we've had this year for 2024. This is for property tax relief for natural gas pipelines. So this is equivalent to $100,000 of tax revenue, a reduction in tax revenue. So back in 2017, council passed a resolution at that time to support the natural gas grant program, the community expansion program, and the municipality committed to a 10-year property tax holiday for the pipeline taxes. And so the reduction of 100,000 is basically represents the equivalent to what tax revenue would have been collected for the pipelines and is being rebated back to EPCOR. A few other changes here. So the IT services agreement is a new operating cost of $100,000. Council approved entering into the agreement with the County of Bruce. The agreement is in effect January 1st, and it will be an ongoing operating expenditure. And it is expected that additional investment in IT assets and infrastructure will continue to be required. As well, the OPP contract is an increase of $97,000, and that is also uncontrollable. The cost per property is increasing by $4.80, and the 2023 property count has also increased. So the overall total amount that the municipality has to pay for OPP costs in 2024 is $2.4 million. As well, we have a reduction in the estimate of bag tag revenues, which equates to $60,000. So in 2023, the cost of bag tags increased by $1 from $2.50 to $3.50. And there were certain projections that were made in the 2023 budget of $710,000 in revenues resulting from the sale of bag tags. However, this was a somewhat aggressive estimate, and the actuals did not meet that amount. And so we are refining the budget estimates for 2024 by reducing the budget to $650,000. So for Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority levy, the levy has increased is projected to increase by $53,000. So the overall SVCA budget has a municipal levy increase of $216,000, and the municipality's portion is $35,000 of that, as well as an additional $17,480 for Category 3 programs. In addition to that, there are services that were previously provided under Category 2 that will now have to be performed by municipal staff in-house. So there's additional costs that will be absorbed by the municipality and by staff in order to be able to perform those services. However, just on Friday, we were notified by SVCA that the Ministry of Natural Resources issued a new directive to conservation authorities on December 13th. And it mandated that the conservation authorities cannot alter their fees for planning, development, and permitting in 2024. This directive was originally in place in 2023, and it was extended now until 2024 as well. So the letter that we received from the SPCA has said that they will be revising their budget or reviewing and potentially revising. So there may be a further tax levy increase, but we're not sure at this time. Those changes will be reflected at the next budget meeting if they're available. The Basra recycling contract, we've estimated a $42,000 increase in the recycling contract. So that's about a 15% cost increase over 2024. And that's due to a change in market conditions for the resale of cardboard. Insurance premiums are projected to increase about 10%. And the insurer has advised for the municipality to budget for 10 to 15%, although I did speak to them the other day and they said that the increases are not as significant as they had been in previous years. And in some cases, they have seen a single-digit increase. So I'm optimistic, but we'll see. And then finally, the office lease rental income, we projected a revenue reduction of $29,000. So there is certain rental income that is collected from the tenants at various municipal facilities, including the Municipal Administration Center here upstairs, as well as physician leases. And due to expiring office leases in 2024, and we don't have new tenants yet, as well as, I believe, 2 fewer physician leases at the medical clinic that we're charging for, because if we have a new physician, their first year is rent-free. So that overall impact is $29,000. A couple more. So recreation revenue adjustments is going to be increased by $47,000. So this is a favorable change. There is higher than estimated rentals and membership revenues and registration revenues that have materialized, and higher participation in 2023. And therefore, we've increased the revenue numbers for 2024. As well, another favorable change is the municipal property tax transfer for the OFP Lands Business Park. So typically we have been taking the property or the equivalent of the property tax revenue for the MCR building there at the OPF lands, and we've been taking that property tax and paying down the internal loan that we've used to pay for the servicing at that park. And this is the final year where we'll have to do that. So that's resulted in a favorable amount of 51,000. And then the 2025 budget, we'll realize the full amount. So we will no longer have to allocate anything for the internal loan going forward. As well, bank interest income, we've increased by 171,000, and that's due to the higher interest rates earned on our operating bank account. So that summarizes all of the uncontrollable changes. I'm just going to quickly recap the capital budget. I did not put every single project in this presentation. This is just a 5-year capital plan summary. It shows the carry forward projects from the 2023 budget as well as previous years. It is not expected that every single project entered into in a given year will be completed within that same calendar year. So it's quite common to have carry forward projects. So the carry forward projects are currently at the point in time that this was developed 12.5 million. But again, some of that is based on the timing of when we receive invoices. So there's quite a few invoices for the Queen Street project that we would not have even received yet, and we'll have to pay before year end, most likely. So that's just the dollar amount. It's not necessarily the status of the project either. And then you'll see the 2024 to 2028 there, and further details of the budget are in the report. And this chart just summarizes how much spending we've had over each of the years since 2015. So currently we're lower than the previous year of 13 million. It just depends on what significant projects are included in the budget. So just shows you the trend. The trend is definitely that we're increasing over time. With respect to reserve funds, there is reserve fund information that's provided in the budget package. So as I mentioned, this particular budget year does not include the 3% tax rate increase for the life cycle reserve fund transfer, but that's not to say that we're not transferring any money into the reserve fund. So we're transferring the same amount into that fund as we did in the previous year, which is 4.35 million. The budget also includes 100,000 for fleet replacement, 100,000 for fire and emergency vehicle replacement, 100,000 for the landfill cell replacement, and 50,000 for the future rehabilitation of the Davidson Center indoor pool. These are just ongoing ones that we've always had, and they're the same as they were in the prior year. The 2022 asset management financial strategy does require a consistent and increasing annual investment in capital so that excess annual funds can accrue in the reserve funds. And just to say that all of this information was provided in a previous an asset management plan report. However, just to summarize that the financial strategy says it's a tax levy increase of 6.7% annually. And we've been doing a 3% tax rate increase just for affordability primarily. So with a 0% tax rate increase in 2024, we will have some challenges going forward. We do have to continue to increase our investment into the reserve fund in order to be able to fund all of our assets. And as you can see, the 2025 column, the draft capital budget currently shows drawing more than 14 million from this fund. And if we do that, then we're going to already be in a deficit next year of $45,000. But I still think this slide is a good news story because this shows from the inception of the fund in 2012 or 2013, just how much we've been able to contribute into our assets over the course of that decade. And that's a total of 27 million almost. And prior to this time, there was absolutely no tax dollars allocated to reserve funds every year. So this is $27 million worth of projects that we were now able to invest in that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So I still think it's a good news story, even though we haven't included the 3% in this year. Just to reconcile the life cycle reserve fund. So this is just projections, it's not the final numbers, but the draft capital budget includes a withdrawal from the life cycle reserve fund of 5.7 million to fund the projects. And we project that the closing balance of that fund would be 8.6 million by the end of the year. And here's just an example of some of the projects that are being funded by the Life Cycle Reserve Fund in the draft budget. They're just summarized there. So that concludes my portion, and we're moving on to the departmental budgets, with the first one being the council budget. So at this point, I will turn it over to Jolene.
If I may interject, thank you, Roxana, for that presentation. I'm just wondering if there are any high-level questions from council regarding what we heard from our Director of Corporate Services. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. They might not find it high level, but I think it's appropriate time before we start going through everything. So
Well,
if you want to coach me, I'll just stop right now.
Well, I'm just.
It's
if-
okay.
If it's going to get into a department, like we will be addressing each of the departments. So if it's a strategy that council has undertaken, something like that, to understand better where we're going, that's absolutely, Councillor Stewart, go ahead.
Yeah, because this is a summary. You know, what she delivered was a summary, and I'm asking questions on the summary. On page 30, you didn't give us a number for the step up increase. Could you provide that back to the council? It doesn't have to be today, but I'd like to know how much the step up is with the wages and benefit. Page 19, uncontrollable changes. You have salaries and benefit as an uncontrollable changes. I don't quite understand that. Salaries and benefits are controllable. And we do control them. We just haven't seen a review yet, so we don't really have, but I'm a little bit confused why you put it into uncontrollable. It is a controllable change. We do increase or decrease salaries in people. So why do you incorporate it in uncontrollable?
If I might respond to that, I think what I heard our director commenting was if staff complement stayed the same, exactly the same this year as it did last year, then this would be the net result. I acknowledge Councillor Stewart's comments that staff may retire, there may be vacancies or whatever, but should the staff complement remain the same, identical last year, this year, then the agreements that we've entered into would have that net result.
And I agree with you. So we need to do better forecasting, even in the salary and benefits, because right now you're just saying it's the same, which is fine. We also have a disagreement here. We have an IT contract that all of a sudden is incorporated in operating budget. I believe that we had a meeting on that. We had a council, we had a motion that we weren't include the 100,000 in operating budget until we really saw the audit report.
We'll leave that question till we get to that department, if you don't mind, Councillor Stewart.
No problem. In page 24, when you talked about reducing services and reducing, you know, some of the cost and everything, you didn't have a component for labor. I mean, if you reduce services, there probably should be some sort of component on that page. How much less labor do we need? But I didn't see that. All I saw was a reduction of about $500,000 on services. So I'd like to know how much reducing services would contribute to maybe less labor involved. You know, there should be a component of labor. And the gas line thing, how did we do the gas line of 100,000 holiday without a CIP? That's an interesting thing because we're not really allowed to give private companies a tax break without a CIP. So I'm a little bit confused in 2017 how that came to be. But I don't think anyone was around here to really explain that right today. But, you know, that's 10 years, that's $1 million that we're giving this private company as a tax relief.
Moving on. Very good. When Councillor Stewart comes back, I will address the comments that he just made regarding whether this is valuable use of time or not. It is not acceptable to do that because our staff has invested significant and valuable time to help council make decisions that are going to direct the municipality. The comments, I will hang on to them until Councillor Stewart returns because there's no value in saying them. It's directing his remarks, not ours. So, Director, please continue our conversation. You want to lead on? Okay, CAO.
Thank you. Good morning, Council, and through you, Mayor. Pleased to be able to present the two departmental budgets for one council and one for the CAO's office. If you take a look at the slide in the presentation deck, these are generally those established priorities for 2024 related to council's vision. And as you know, the plan is moving forward to help us set a strategic priority and plan for beyond this time frame in 2024. So if you move to the next slide, sorry, thank you. Council's operating budget, not a significant change overall in terms of where things are going. The 3% or 4%, 3% overall, the biggest component of that had to do with wages and benefits. We did take a look at whether or not we wanted to increase the total expenses related to travel and conferences to reflect that council could, each individual council member could attend approximately 2 conferences a year, but opted to keep that closer to actuals, as that would have been a fairly significant increase to that portion of council's budget. So if we flip to, unless there's any questions about council's budget. Okay, thank you. For the CAO's office. As I've identified on the slide, these are the priorities for 2024, and these are based on the objectives that come out of the integrated strategy and various plans and discussions that we've had through council. So looking at ensuring organizational review, presenting that to council and bringing forward any recommendations that may come out of that and implement those in 2024 and beyond. And as well as working with council on the development of a new strategic plan. This will include the environmental scan that has already been drafted and help to provide some goal setting for the municipal corporation.
So I'd like to respond to Councillor Stewart's inappropriate comments as he was leaving about the value of the budget discussion. And though each of us has particular interests, staff has invested significant time. So I will not tolerate comments that suggest our staff is providing invaluable service to us. And Councillor Stewart, I would highly recommend that you don't let small comments like that suggesting that this is not valuable time.
It's not valuable
Excuse me,
time.
this is not debatable.
So, okay, do you want me to leave? Do you want me to leave?
I did not.
Are you saying that I can't ask those tough questions? I mean, this is budget time. This is the most important thing
This is
we
not
do on
Councillor
behalf of the
Stewart,
taxpayers.
This is not debatable. What I'm commenting on is the inappropriate comments to suggest that what staff has presented is not valuable. So the importance of discussions is crucial. The importance of setting strategic goals and directions is valuable. And your input is encouraged, as is everybody else's. But to suggest that staff is doing things that is not of value to us is totally incorrect. So
I want more. I want more.
Excuse me, Councillor, this is not debatable.
Okay.
It's a chair ruling. CAO, continue, please.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. Moving on to that next set that's under responsible and effective government as well. Carrying on with the 4-year policy review. This is being done throughout the organization, but we are tracking that within the CAO's office in an attempt to get us on an annual review that feeds into that 4-year cycle, so that each council term there is a review of all of the policies established by council. Additionally, continuing to work with the Municipal Innovation Council to look at different ways where we can work together. Shared services and alternative service delivery models are not unique to this area, but something that certainly needs to be continually explored. And the only way to do that is build relationships, have conversations, and look at things, share information to be able to look at things and see if we can do them differently together. Additionally, supporting the opportunities for technological enhancements to improve the users of both internal and external systems. Primarily those help with efficiencies, but sometimes with service delivery as well. And I think over the time period that we've had in the last few years, that municipal government has adopted a number of new technological enhancements to be able to support delivery of services. We'll carry that on. With respect to planning, I've identified a couple of key things that I think are important for us, continuing to advocate with school board partners as well as others to advocate for skilled training to support various projects in our region. I think we are in a key area of growth and opportunity, and we want to take all the opportunities we can to support those by working with others, as well as community growth. We've talked a little bit about this, council, in terms of looking at secondary growth plans, and what I'm exploring is trying to see whether or not there are opportunities for some external funding to allow us to look at secondary growth plans to support and enhance the conversation with the community about how we want to grow in our settlement areas. With respect to the economy, again, that's collaborating and advocating with various levels of government and other partners to promote the area with respect to being a supportive community of the nuclear sector. Obviously, this is an area of clear focus for council and the community and our organization. Ongoing advocacy is something you will see us undertake throughout various opportunities, including upcoming conferences, but external to that as well with key political partners. If you flip to the next slide, in terms of operating budget, the significant changes have to do with increasing of salaries and benefits, and that's the main increase associated with the CAO's office. There's no additional requests for funding in that area. If there's any questions on that budget?
Councillor Stewart, you are excused from our council meeting. Your insubordination is not appreciated.
Thank you. I do have a question.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Seeing that your timeline was 10:30-ish in order to get into close, maybe the remaining departments could really focus on hitting the high points, knowing that all of council should have read the detailed stuff. Because I'd really like to hear a bit from all of the departments before 10:30 rather than some get dropped off.
Council direction? Okay. All right with municipal staff? Okay.
You need to leave? I just want to make it perfectly clear.
You are excused, sir.
So are you officially asking me to leave?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
There's clear and direct direction in our procedural bylaw about Councillor Stewart's re-engagement with council that we will defer to. All right, next director.
Okay, so through you, Mayor. So for corporate services, I'll really try to be brief because the majority of them would have been covered off anyways. But just to talk about some of the priorities that we're going to be working on. Condition assessment. So for asset management, we're going to continue working on condition assessments for infrastructure, for municipal facilities, and we're going to continue to refine the data and the asset management plan. As well as the asset retirement obligations. They're not included on this list, but as part of the overall review of our assets. And even though it's a 2023 requirement for the financial statements, it is something that carries through for our work in early 2024 as well, as we're working on the 2023 year end. So that's something that staff will be continuing to work on. Records management, it's also continuing to work on rolling that out throughout the organization and continuing to scan the building department historical records. And that's one of the contract positions that we have put forward in the budget It would be for the 1-year contract and specifically for the building department, as they do have a lot of records that would need to be scanned. And the idea is because they're working out of the building department, that would be covered off through the CBO's rate-based. So it would be not tax-based for that contract position. Another thing that is part of the records and the workflow for that is that we're going to be implementing an accounts payable workflow process using the Laserfiche platform. So we've been able to use our remaining grant money that we received from the Municipal Modernization Fund, and we've purchased a bulk of hours that is going to help configure the workflow for our municipality, and so therefore that would automate the accounts payable workflow process, and including approvals as well. So hopefully that'll save a lot of time once it is implemented. As well, we are going to continue to roll out the e-procurement platform through bids and tenders. This is definitely a slow-moving project. It's because of the fact that we don't have a centralized purchasing individual, so all of the purchasing is decentralized through each department, and so it takes a lot of one-on-one staff time to be able to train those different individuals on using the bids and tenders platform. So we have started to do a few procurements through that platform. Most recently, the engineering RFP was done through that platform as well, and we're going to continue to roll that out. As well, we will be working with the county closely to roll out the IT services agreement, and that's going to start January 1st right away. We're going to have a senior leadership team meeting on how we're going to kick it off and what the first 90 days will look like and what this means for staff and transitioning to a ticketing platform. So that's something that we're going to be working on for the majority of the first year. As well, a big project for the finance department specifically will be for the payroll system. So we have a go live date of September 2024, and it will take significant staff resources in order to be able to launch this. We're already having multiple kickoff meetings, and we're going to be starting some training and working right away in January on getting this moving. So those are the majority of the priorities for corporate services, and the rest of the materials in the budget report. If that's sufficient for council, I'll just end it there. Okay.
Questions regarding corporate services priorities, strategic direction? Seeing none, carry on, please.
Thank you. Following suit, I'll make this quick as well. I do have quite a few notes, but I am cognizant of time. I just want to take a really quick minute too and thank you to the community services staff who put a tremendous amount of time in preparing the budget. So as far as our priorities go for integrated strategy, I'll just focus on that. And if there's any questions in regards to the other slides, I'm happy to answer them. So developed through the integrated strategy are our 2024 priorities for community services. There are several there. Keeping in contacts with a lot of our parks are the focus for 2024. The Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan, Council is aware that that's been progressing, and they should see a presentation of that in Q1, at the end of Q1. Working with the community partners to develop a plan for a new performance as well as additional accessibility elements for Victoria Park. That has started. Yeah, if you can just switch back to the slide, we're one ahead. To my first slide should be strategic. I don't know who's driving. There we go. Thank you. We're excited to say that the Victoria Park has been, thank you, has been identified with a firm who is going to be launching that after we complete our initial community engagement for our recreation strategic plan and the boardwalk plan. That will be following suit immediately after the Victoria Park will be, and that's anticipated to be completed in Q2 of this year, 2024. Connaught has been part of the Recreation and Park Strategic Plan as well, and we recognize that there are some enhancements that need to be occurring at that park. We're going to be looking at that, and I suspect there'll be some strong recommendations in that for that park as well. Staff will be continuing to do some items within the operating budget as well to enhance the user experience at that park. We will be working closely with the Lions Club from Tiverton, and council has heard a presentation from the Lions Club in Tiverton for the consideration of a splash pad. And there is some language in your budget presentation as well for moving that forward, and looking for some pre-budget approval to launch an RFP for that facility. With our waterfront, we recognize that our waterfront is one of our largest assets in community services, but certainly needs some attention. We heard from Smart Beach presentation at the last council, and we anticipate a final report to come in Q4 from Smart Beach. At the same time, as you are aware, we're working closely with the redesign of the boardwalk, as well as the Pier Safety Ad Hoc Committee, which will be bringing some recommendations forward too in Q1. Moving forward to our other priority is with our fire services. They've done a tremendous amount in the training facility that council would have seen in our bus tour over a year ago. It's impressive to see what they've done within the last 12 months and what they're looking at doing in 2024 as well. They've had a strong partnership with KDSS construction class throughout this, as well as several tradespeople, and they're looking at providing some new props as far as and extending the firefighter 2 qualifications. So those were our priorities to date. I will hold off going through the rest of the presentation since we are cognizant of time, and if council has any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you. I just want to touch a little bit on the fact that the Parks and Rec strat plan is looking at completion at the end of Q1 2024. We had some conversations over the past couple of years past year about some different assets and facilities. And I'm just wondering, you know, we had a conversation at our special meeting about a couple of rural community centers. There's some discussion around the lease for the Blue Water Trailer Park. I'm just wondering, are there going to be any highlights that we can start to hear to consider for budget deliberations at this point? Or is it something that we're going to have to wait for the full plan to get any of those kind of details for those specific items?
Thank you for the question, and through you, I think what you'll find in some of the recommendations that they will be long-term solutions. So they're not going to be immediate. They're not going to be immediate recommendations that are going to take a lot of capital expenditures in. Some of them will be low-hanging fruit that we can accomplish within our operating budget, but some of those larger recommendations is going to be thoughtful conversations at this table, which will not happen immediately because they are such long-term and because of the impact that they may have on the community as well.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's a question about the strategic future of the Davidson Center track, and can imagine that possibly in this day and age, schools that are rebuilt might actually include tracks of their own, and whether this possibility is informing what our choices are as far as what we're going to do with the track.
Thank you, and through you, definitely the track is a unique asset that we have for municipality. Typically, you would see tracks that are associated with school boards and that they have ownership of them. There's no doubt in that the existing track and the condition of it does have some hazards as well. My most recent conversation was actually this past Friday with the school board in regard to the track and what may come with the new school and the notion of potential partnerships with them that may exist. I can tell you that the school board at this point is not interested in contributing towards the track. The capital expenditures of a track currently, as you are aware, they have free usage of the track. Our conversations were around starting to charge them for the usage of that track moving forward. At this point, there is no partnership in the future use or the future development of a new track with the municipality.
Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Sorry, just trying to go off mute. Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess my question kind of plays off a similar concept. Like, we included in this budget the rents from the campsite, the trailer park that we discussed down by the beach. But I believe it was a topic that we've been asking for quite a while, to have a return on what we could do with that, whether we could take over management ourselves, which is why we only did the short-term 1-year extension of that lease agreement. And I know we didn't want to leave the current tenant in the lurch with not providing enough advance notification that we were going to change. I'm just wondering when we're going to get that particular report, because it would feed into these numbers.
Thank you for the question, and through you. Definitely, there will be a component within the strategic plan for Parks and Recreation that will involve the campground. I can tell you as recently as last week, senior staff were seeking legal advice that will assist with the overall recommendation within the strategic plan that we'll be receiving in Q1.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just, Dunsmore Park. Probably for the last 10 or 12 years, we've talked around this table about some improvements and.
Strategic counselor, a little
Strategic,
higher
so-
level. We're not.
Sorry about that. I'm just wondering,
Parks in general.
is it gonna fit into some actions here down the road, or is it possible to fit in? Question.
Through you, I can't speak to all of the recommendations that will be coming through the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. I anticipate there will be some recommendations in there as far as all of the parks, but I can't give a definite answer at this point in regards to Dunsmore.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll move on to the next presentation.
Slide deck's caught up. No, actually too far ahead. We'll get Nicole to take it back to too many clicks. All right, I'll start while that's coming back up. So the priorities for 2024 for infrastructure and development. Some of these are ongoing and standing considerations. Others are, tied to components that the group has been working on and is hoping to close out. So the first one, just relating to being progressive in our efforts around how we build out and maintain our infrastructure. There's three components there. And the first one, implement a proactive infrastructure through capital planning to serve existing residents, enable future growth. So that's something that, that we continue to do on a day-to-day basis. We take a look at what development opportunities are, and then further, look at our existing asset database and look at renewing it. We'll continue to investigate and adopt environmental practices as an organization, and with the intention to reduce the overall carbon footprint of the municipality. So some areas in the waste management sector or related to fleet, can primarily fall into that, or how we're heating and whatnot with our facilities. So then the last piece that really kind of ties that together. So we'll investigate energy efficiency upgrades across the municipal fleet, building and infrastructure to reduce the environmental impact, and uncover cost savings over the long term. So primary opportunities there would be electrification of fleet, looking at natural gas for facilities for terms of how we heat that. Next, the optimization and use of our existing infrastructure, and making sure that it's adequately maintained so we get the longest life cycle out of it that we can. So with this, that includes all of our components. So roads, sidewalk, street lights, storm, wastewater, water infrastructure. And so this is through both our capital and our operational budgets. And so some of the things that you'll see as we dive into operating and that build off last year, an example is flushing and cameraing our storm and sanitary sewers. So that gives us a better idea of what the condition is like, so we can start planning capitally if we need to do any bigger maintenance to that or potential replacement. Next, provide infrastructure needed to accommodate planned growth. So one of the things that we've been working on over the last year and look to, as council heard recently, look to close out in the first half of 2024 is the update to our zoning bylaw, with the hope that that can strategically help, help our property owners move forward with their vision in terms of development and do that from a simplistic aspect. Improve organization efficiency and be more innovative. So the first piece here is continuation of looking for cost savings, and one of those ways is by doing things in-house versus relying solely on third-party contractors to come in. So a couple examples over the last year, and that we're going to continue to focus on using our skilled staff that we have within our team and rent equipment to, to perform excavation practices through things such as, whether that be roadside ditching or installation of culverts. So we were able to find some cost efficiencies doing that work in-house over the last year. And then the last component is really, day-to-day housekeeping, leads to this, but look at reducing inventory of obsolete assets and older stock in our shops. Last piece here is enhance the community safety and well-being within the municipality. So recently we talked about deferral to a couple policies that tie to this. So in the first quarter of next year, we'll be bringing forward some considerations around traffic calming, speed management, community safety zones. And so looking to implement those type of policies that can help guide staff to, take a look at various locations through the community as requests come in and augment the usability of the roadside network throughout the community. So that's a quick high level of the strategic goals for our group for the year.
Any questions for the Director of Infrastructure and Development? And thank you, Director, for that report. And I missed the opportunity to congratulate our Director of Community Services as well too for the volume of community interaction that goes through your two departments. Glad it's not through the Mayor's office. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, given the exciting forecasted growth in our community, I'm wondering whether it's beneficial to consider looking at a potential contract position in our building department to support applicants and permitting. I just don't know. I saw that we have a contract position right now planned for the records management, but I wasn't sure if that was something that was considered to try and support and possibly even speed up some of our growth.
Don't answer that question. It's we're in the weeds already. We need to. It's conversations way above that right now. We'll get into that. There will be opportunity for those questions. It's just not right now. Any other strategic directions or questions we have for the director here? Okay. Moving on.
Through you, Mayor Craig, I can speak really fast. I'm Italian, so it does help. I just want to mention before we get into it, just a couple of the pieces of strategic initiatives that a lot of our work involves complex issues. And so it's not the type of work you're going to see, outcomes the very next day. There is a lot of complexity with it. There's also a lot of collaboration that needs to take place in order to be successful. Just a high level overview of some of the priorities that we're working on. So under economic development, really continuing to work with the nuclear sector, with businesses, with developers, and increasing the new builds in business parks. And so this is a concentrated area of Sherry Leslie, who is our economic development coordinator, and really supporting existing businesses to expand, but also supporting local businesses through things like our past year with the Downtown Dig. And so that's really part of our economic development portfolio. There's also lots of pressures and trends in economic development, and that really revolves around high interest rates and economic instability. And so I just want to mention those as some of the trends that we need to think about as we're working on economic development. It also under economic development, you'll see an area, you'll see, I'm actually, which slide am I on now? So looking at tourism, I'm going to mention tourism here. just that tourism really is an area that helps support economic development. It makes it a destination to visit. We offer, things like special events that the municipality supports and hosts. We also staff the Welcome Center to welcome new visitors and provide information and information around, destinations and assets within the community. I would also like to mention there's things for when you think about trends for tourism, a lot of it's moving online, but there is still the need for paper and that kind of information. And I would also say that some of it's outside of the municipality's control around tourism. We rely a lot on our accommodation sector, things like safety, all of those kind of things impact the desire for people to visit communities. So I just want to mention that as some of the issues that we face. Under the area of like planning, under the integrated strategy, we have work around a community improvement plan that you've seen in the past. It is under the budget area around other considerations. It wasn't, the full amount wasn't put in the program part. It's part of what council needs to consider as we look at the work over the next year. And so then moving on to enhancing quality of life under that focus area, that's really the work in our areas to recruit new physicians to the municipality. And one of the trends, as we all know, is that the wait list in the community is created a really strong need. And even though it's not a provincial responsibility, the municipality has taken on some of the supports to help enhance and attract and also retain physicians. So it is a trend. It is something that we need to pay attention to. But again, it's one of those responsibilities that aren't just ours, and it does need a larger pool. And that's one of the things we're going to be looking at this year is how do we broaden that reach and the collaboration to help us, support physician recruitment beyond advocacy to the province. Sorry, I had more notes, but I don't want to cover them. So then moving to effective and efficient government, I just want to mention the work of communications. And really, this is the work around all of our media channels. And that's through the work of Nicole Griffin, looking at things around, all of our media channels, but also refreshing our website, our municipal website, as well as our tourism website for 2024. So that work we're hoping to launch in the new year, and really is a big piece of work. Also in 2024, we're going to be developing a framework and tools for public engagement. I know that's something that council has been, expressing interest in wanting us to improve. And so that is part of the work of 2024. One of the things I just want to mention around a trend is that one size of shoe does not fit all in communications. So we really need to be conscious of that. And when I say 7 times 7 different ways, it really is proven in research that we just can't stick to one channel. So it does make it challenging, but there's also increases to purchasing media ads, et cetera, newspaper, everything is going up. And so it does provide us some challenges for 2024. And I think then I'm going to stop there.
Any questions for the manager? Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you for the report. I noticed that there certainly seems to be strategically looking at continuing with much of what has transpired in 2023, but also expanding or venturing out into perhaps slightly new areas. Is that, do you have concerns about resources in doing that?
Through you, Mayor. Deputy Mayor, do you mean new programs for inclusion, or which area were you referring to?
So both with regards to inclusion, as well as looking at some of the housing collaboratives that perhaps you're going to be expanding out into.
Through you, Mayor. There's always concerns there. You'll see in the other considerations, there are additional funds suggested for inclusion work, but not for staffing, more for help to support that work. So either through trainers or consultants and whatnot. The Housing Action Plan is a big job on its own, absolutely. And so we'll have to be realistic around managing expectations of what we can do based on staffing, resources, and finances.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's a question about the economic development strategy. So in my mind, economic development can be institutional, industrial, agricultural, or commercial. And by my count, we have 5 residential projects that are in active execution right now that weren't before. So I'm really interested in seeing what our strategic and tactical approach is related to commercial economic development and the types of things that might be like restaurants, entertainments, the types of things that add to the quality of life for those people who are going to be occupying those residents we're building.
Were you looking for a response, or is that just kind of,
It could be a question. It wasn't sort of a question, but
is there a response to that, or just nod your head and say, yep?
I,
or-
I think it's a good comment, and it's something that we'll be looking at. It's part of our, a plan. It's more what is the priority for the upcoming year. And so I've taken note of that, and we can report back if that's suitable to you.
Any other questions for the manager? Okay, once again, thank you to staff. It seems like whirlwind tour through, but council needed to hear from our staff leadership team about what they have heard from us in the last year. And they have developed a municipal budget, a constraining budget at this point. There is no money for new projects at this time. There is limited money for continuing what's already there. Council's decisions will be to address the services that we want to include and the budget that we want to include to make sure the services happen. We don't have authority to say we need to get rid of X number of staff or whatever. That's not our job. Our job is to say, these are the services. This is the budget. This is how we want to strategically advance our community through this project or that project or something else. In the next budget meeting scheduled for the 15th of January, we will have opportunity to more specifically dive into what does it mean when we take this project out? How staff has been excellent in identifying the implications. If we take this out, this is what may or may not happen. We may have a different view, and that's okay. But we need to discuss those implications. Is this where we want our municipality to go? If we talk about development of some sort, it's, you know, we may not do it now, but does that just set it back 1 year? Does that set it back 10 years? Big decisions. So if there are no further questions regarding process or questions for our staff, then I would, there is a motion here in our council package regarding pre-budget approval. I need a mover and seconder that whereas the Tiverton Lions Club has fundraised $300,000 for a new splash pad in Tiverton as presented at the November 22 council meeting, whereas the Tiverton Lions Club has requested that an RFP be issued as soon as possible in order to complete the project in 2024, and that council provide pre-budget approval of $300,000 for the Tiverton splash pad to come from funds raised by the Tiverton Lions Club in order to proceed with the issuance of an RFP. Mover and seconder, councillors Steinoff Gray, her hand is up, and Councillor Kavanaugh. Oh, it's been up for a while. Whoops. Just put it up. Okay, there we go. Director, do you have any comments in regards to informing council of how this might work?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'll be working closely with the Lions Club in developing an RFP based on the budget that they've received to date. They've had an aggressive fundraising campaign and can be commended for that. Obviously, the need to get an RFP out now is due to the fact that once budgets are approved in many municipalities, other municipalities will be in the same caliber as we are, and we want to have a jump start to that so that we at least have an opportunity to have a season with the splash pad in Tiverton.
Further questions? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, when the Tiverton Lions presented their proposal for the splash pad, I think there were a couple different operational types. The one that they're looking at in doing an RFP for, do we have a sense of what the ongoing operational costs will be once that's in place?
Thank you for the question and through you. The reason why we've been meeting with Tiverton's Lions Club is our preference as a staff person to have recirculating, sorry, not a recirculating, retention tank so that we can use that for the purposes of operations. That cuts down costing tremendously because we won't be using domestic water then to water some of our irrigation areas. So it will be very minimal based on my previous experience as well with splash pads. It should not have a huge impact to any of the operating budget.
Further questions? All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. All right, we need a mover and seconder. The council move into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of considering a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or on behalf of the municipality or local board, particularly negotiations with Kincardine Family Health Organization. And further, that council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Mover and seconded by Deputy